The wind whispered secrets across Gilgo Beach, carrying the scent of salt and decay. Detective Sarah Reeves stood at the edge of the dunes, her eyes scanning the desolate landscape. The beach, once a haven for sunbathers and surfers, now held a darker purpose. It was here, buried beneath the shifting sands, that a grim discovery had been made. For bodies, wrapped in burlap, their stories silenced by the relentless tide of time and tide. Sarah's hand unconsciously tightened around her badge, the metal cool against her palm. This wasn't just another case. This was the beginning of a hunt for a monster. A killer who had turned Long Island's picturesque coastline into his personal graveyard. The first victim had been found almost by accident, during a training exercise with a cadaver dog. But what followed was a methodical search that unveiled a horror beyond imagination. 10 bodies in total, most of them young women, their lives cut short by an unseen predator. Sarah's mind drifted to the case files, each victim's face etched in her memory. Melissa Barthélemy, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Megan Waterman, Amber Lynn Costello, names that had become more than just entries in a police report. They were daughters, sisters, friends, and now they were her responsibility. The killer had been meticulous, leaving few clues behind. But Sarah knew that every criminal, no matter how careful, always left a trace. It was her job to find that trace, to follow it until it led her to the truth. As she turned back towards the makeshift command center, a chill ran down her spine. She couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, hidden among the dunes, the killer was watching, waiting, planning his next move in this macabre game of cat and mouse. The command center buzzed with activity, a stark contrast to the somber beach outside. Maps of the area covered every available surface, red pins marking each grim discovery. Sarah's eyes were drawn to a board filled with photos of the victims. Melissa Barthélemy's smile seemed to catch the light, a haunting reminder of a life cut short. She had been the first to disappear, vanishing from her Bronx apartment in 2009. Her disappearance had initially been treated as just another missing person case. But as more women vanished, a sinister pattern began to emerge. Each victim had been petite in their 20s with brown hair. All had worked as escorts. The killer had a type, and he stuck to it with chilling consistency. Sarah's attention was drawn to a new face on the board, a man named Joseph Brewer. He had been one of the last people to see Shannon Gilbert alive, the woman whose disappearance had led to this grisly discovery. Brewer claimed he had hired Gilbert as an escort, but she had run from his house in a panic. His story seemed plausible, but something about it nagged at Sarah's instincts. She made a mental note to dig deeper into Brewer's background. As she studied the evidence board, a colleague approached with a grim expression. "We've got another one," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's heart sank. Another victim, another life extinguished by this faceless monster. She grabbed her coat and headed back to the beach, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The new discovery was different. The body wasn't wrapped in burlap like the others. It lay exposed, as if the killer wanted it to be found. A message, perhaps? A taunt? As the forensics team worked, Sarah's mind raced. What had changed? Why this deviation from the pattern? She couldn't shake the feeling that the killer was evolving, becoming bolder. Back at the precinct, Sarah pored over the reports, looking for any connection she might have missed. Her eyes kept returning to Joseph Brewer's file. Something about him didn't add up. She decided to pay him another visit, hoping to catch him off guard. Brewer's house was modest, tucked away on a quiet street in Oak Beach. As Sarah approached, she noticed fresh tire tracks in the driveway. Had he just returned from somewhere? Brewer answered the door, his face a mask of polite confusion. "Detective Reeves, what brings you here?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. Sarah studied him closely, looking for any sign of nervousness or guilt. "Just following up on a few things, Mr. Brewer. Mind if I come in?" He hesitated for a moment before stepping aside, allowing her to enter. The house was immaculate, almost too perfect, felt staged like a showroom. Sarah's eyes darted around, taking in every detail. A faint smell of bleach hung in the air. "You've been cleaning, Mr. Brewer?" she asked casually. "Just some spring cleaning," he replied, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face. As they talked, Sarah noticed a locked door at the end of the hallway. "What's in there?" she asked, nodding towards it. "Oh, just some old junk. Nothing interesting," Brewer said, a little too quickly. Sarah's instincts screamed that something was off. She needed to get a warrant and fast. As she left Brewer's house, her mind was racing. Was he their guy, or just another dead end? Back at the precinct, Sarah worked tirelessly to build a case for a search warrant. She dug deeper into Brewer's past, uncovering a series of restraining orders filed by ex-girlfriends. Each complaint described a man with a volatile temper and a penchant for control. It wasn't enough for a conviction, but it was enough for a judge to grant the warrant. As the sun rose over Long Island, Sarah led a team back to Brewer's house. The quiet street was soon filled with the sound of police radios and barked orders. Brewer watched from his front porch, his face a mask of indignation. "This is harassment," he spat as Sarah approached. "You've got nothing on me." Sarah ignored him, her focus on the locked door at the end of the hallway. As the lock was broken, a musty smell wafted out. Sarah's hand instinctively went to her gun. The room was dark, illuminated only by the beams of police flashlights. At first glance, it seemed to be a normal storage room, filled with boxes and old furniture. But as Sarah's eyes adjusted to the darkness, she noticed something odd about the far wall. It seemed newer than the rest of the room. Fresh paint, no scuff marks. Her heart pounding, Sarah approached the wall, running her hand along its surface. There, almost imperceptible, was a seam, a hidden door. With a nod to her team, Sarah braced herself as they pried the false wall open. The stench that hit them was overwhelming, the unmistakable odor of death. Behind the wall was a small room, its walls lined with plastic sheeting. And there, arranged with chilling precision, were trophies from each victim. Jewelry, phones, even locks of hair, each labeled with a date and name. Sarah's eyes fell on a familiar necklace. It had belonged to Melissa Barthélemy. The room spun as the full horror of what they'd uncovered sank in. They had found their killer. The Long Island serial killer had been hiding in plain sight all along. As Sarah emerged from the house, she saw Brewer being led away in handcuffs. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, she saw the monster behind the man. It was a look of pure malevolence, a glimpse into the void that had claimed so many lives. Sarah turned away, her job done but her heart heavy. The case was solved, but the scars it left would never truly heal. As the sun set over Gilgo Beach, Sarah stood once more at the edge of the dunes. The wind still whispered its secrets, but now they were tinged with a sense of closure. She thought of Melissa and the other victims, hoping they could finally rest in peace. The Long Island serial killer was behind bars, but his shadow would linger over this beach for years to come. Sarah knew that there would be other cases, other killers to catch. But for now, she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. Justice had been served, but at what cost? As she turned to leave, Sarah cast one last glance at the beach. The waves continued their endless dance, indifferent to the human drama that had unfolded on their shores. And in the fading light, Sarah could almost imagine she saw the spirits of the victims, finally at peace. The case of the Long Island serial killer was closed, but its echoes would resonate for generations to come.